All right, here we are in overcast Spain. Personally like this track. Currently P14 as we haven't set a time, as we see our new rating and stats. 126.3 to set our provisional time. That's P2 behind Aruvula. A lot of tire wear there on the front left. And then our final run of the day, we're going to be down about 3/10. So at this point I realized that our setup was not set for the straights. So we're going to be starting in P17 for the sprint race.
It's time to leave for now, but we'll be back tomorrow when the feature race gets itself underway. So it's all about speed in today's sprint race then. Not very many laps and no chance to get ahead on strategy. Who here today has the raw skill to take them to the top? It's back to the future for the F2 drivers today. We welcome the removal of the chicane in the final sector. It will shorten lap times and reduce the length to 2.9 miles, 14 turns. This was the original setup of the track, but it hasn't been used since 2007. And we welcome you to the Formula 2 commentary box. I'm Alex Jakes. Alongside me for this one, Alex Brundle. It is a sprint race. It is race day. How much can you take from that one-lap pace into our multi-lap contest today?
Try to leave reverse in the pit lane if you possibly can. You do not want to be going backwards from the front row of the grid. This is the moment where some drivers are able to snatch points they won't be able to later on.
It was a decent run in qualifying, though we lost significant time on the straights. Therefore, our strategy for the weekend will rely more on the car's cornering performance. If we maintain this, we should manage the straights effectively.
And we're going to go ahead and jump right into it here in Spain. Still the same weather as we start our sprint. Next to our teammate Cordial there on the right. And a little bit of not oversteer, a little bit of traction loss there on the start on these hard tires as we're looking to see where we can go. We end up going 3 wide as we have, I believe that's Nissani on the inside. In the, that's Crawford there actually. Is potentially 3 wide coming into the corner, but not out of the corner as we're moving up into P14. So that's 3 positions so far through the first sector. Braking early here on this next right-hander. And start of sector 2, pretty tough for me here in Spain, especially with an F2 car. A little bit of a lockup. I believe that is Hadjar up ahead, dropping 1 position. A couple people ahead of us dropping a few positions as well, as we're still holding on to P14. It's Crawford on the inside. We saw his front wing here and there, so we're trying to fight for that position as he finally gives way. And we secure P14. Coming through to the end of sector 2 onto sector 3, and the beginning of sector 3, this long left-hander, really tricky. Had a lot of trouble with it in last year's game in F123, trying to put the power down, and I just oversteer and spin the car out. But trying to look and see about making a position on Hauger there in P13. As first lap was actually really good here in Spain for the sprint race. And 12 laps to go, as we're going to be waiting a little bit to try to make a move on Hauger. As you can see, he's pulling away. You see our setup is not set for that straight. Lap 3 coming through sector 2, the end of sector 1, start of sector 2, this long right-hander. This area, like I said, we're not a big fan of this area. Well, that's actually going to be the first few corners after 2 and 3, I believe. We make a position on Hauger. See his front wing there on the inside as we give him plenty of space. Still about a half second back behind Beauchamp and Miney. As we are coming through sector 2, the second DRS zone, a little bit of oversteer there as we try to push the car to its limit to try to close in on the gap of the driver ahead of us. Lap 4 now, start of lap 4, or no, I believe it is sector 2 as well. We're trying to fight Beauchamp. You can see that we're 3/10 or so. We're able to carry this car through those corners. That's what this setup is more lean towards. I didn't adjust it that much. It's a Steam setup. I didn't get too into doing the setups for F2 to get these videos out in a decent amount of time with my work schedule and family life. But that's going to be P12 at the end of lap 4. And looking pretty good. Our teammate Cordial back there in P15 still, as we're about 6-7 tenths back behind Mighty. And that's going to be Vesti. And Bearman actually dropped a few positions there from a lockup earlier, as we're behind Mighty now, coming through the first corner. And going to be putting the power down a little bit early and carrying that speed through the outside, trying to make a move. Not quite there. We're within 0.2 of a second. As you can see, I believe both Prema cars ahead of us, because I believe we did drive for Prema in 23, the beginning of 23. So, Bearman, Vesti, 2 Prema drivers, as there's a lockup from the Hauger. No, that's going to be a DNF. That's not a lockup. We have a lot of lockups throughout the race a weekend. As lap 7, we're about halfway through the sprint race. And Hauger is the first DNF for the sprint. We're trying to close in on Bearman. Still there about 4.45, about a half second or so. Lap 9, the start of lap 9, we're finally able to try to close in on Bearman. And I believe that's another lockup from a driver ahead. I believe it was Hadjar or Martins, I'm not quite sure. But we make the move on Bearman. His teammate Vesti up ahead, as we're still side by side coming through this long right-hander through sector 1. Coming to a breaking point and then securing that position up in P10. So we started in P17, so we definitely have the pace for the turning on this car. It's just the straights that we're losing time. And we're looking forward to a good feature race at this point, as we try to chase after Vesti. You see, coming through this long right-hander to the DRS zone, about 0.2 or so before the start of the corner. Now we're 3.5 tenths or so. See that we lose that time on that straight. The front and rear wing, I believe, is a little bit too high. Not really an aggressive push against Vesti, but he does give way to us, so we're moving up into P9. Porcher and Martins, P7 and 8. As Porcher is the last person in the points, I believe, for the sprint, as we look to try to make a position on him. As I believe that was our second warning. We had one warning earlier in the race for track limits. And lap 10 or so, towards the end of lap 10, sector 2 into sector 3, we brake late, as we always do, and move on the inside of Porcher, as we did Vesti and Bearman, I believe, in the same corner, actually. I'm not quite sure. But a very popular corner with this setup to make an overtake. And this long, fast double right-hander. We lose a lot of time coming out of these corners, but we're trying to put the power down. See Martin's about 0.2 ahead. See him pulling away about 0.3 or so, 2.5 to 0.3 each. Brochure back down in 21st. As you can see, he was also another DNF for the sprint race, as we're trying to close in on Martin's long right-hander. Porcher is going to try to make a move up on the inside, not quite, as we have the power down. Crawford did have a big lockup earlier in the race, that's why he's back down in P20, and about 18 seconds or so as Porcher makes the position on us on the inside. He's trying to hold on to the inside, but we have that speed and momentum on these tires. We're starting to feel these hard tires, especially this late in the race. Try to do a switch back on Porcher as he's back up into P8. Lockup there from him. And put the power down a little bit too soon, as you see the back end coming out on us. And we're still going to be fighting Porcher for this P8 spot, as we're about halfway through lap 11 of 13 here for the sprint. We lost a little bit coming over the curb. You can hear us going on the gravel. We lose a lot of pace there against Porcher, so we're going to have to regain that momentum, try to overtake him. But we regain that momentum quite quickly through sector 3, as we're about 0.2 on the start of lap 12. A little bit of grass mowing there on our hard tires, as we make that easy move in a P8 against Porcher once again. Martins, Hadjar, Iwasa, Benavides, Darula, Stanek, and Correa, the rest of the drivers ahead of us. We're going to see what kind of momentum that we can carry to try to get ahead of Martins. And this is Victor Martins in the other Alpine Academy car on the final lap, coming through the end of Sector 2, start of Sector 3. And we're looking to make the same exact move that we did to Porcher and I believe Vesti earlier. Back end tries to come out a little bit. When we get the power down, straighten the car out. When we get up into P7 against Victor Martins, fellow Academy driver. We get our final track limits warning there on the final lap. And we just have to make sure that we don't invalidate or go out of the track limits here on the final corner. We let off the gas a little bit sooner, put the gas to the floor. That's P7 for the sprint.
Okay, pick up rubber and bring it home.
He was touch and go for a while there, but Van Amersfoort have done it. Great win.
Well, the sprint win's not where the big points are handed out, but it sets them up well for tomorrow and gives a lot of confidence for the longer feature.
As they make their way down to the podium, there's no denying the strength of the Van Amersfoort team. Van Amersfoort aren't afraid to take risks on new talent, and it certainly looks like it paid off today. Fantastic work. After all this drama, you'll be mad not to join us for the next race. We hope to see you then. Take care. Hello and welcome to the Circuit of Barcelona, Catalunya. We're counting down to the start of today's race, and you can feel the excitement in the air. This promises to be a real spectacle. It's back to the future for the F2 drivers today. We welcome the removal of the chicane in the final sector. It will shorten lap times and reduce the length to 2.9 miles, 14 turns. This was the original setup of the track, but it hasn't been used since 2007. So before the off, let's remind ourselves of yesterday's results with a look at the starting grid. Frederic Vesti lines up on pole position, and starting alongside him P2 is Teo Porcher. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Behrman, Martins, Brad Benavides, Owasa, Deruvala, Hajar, Stanek, Juan Manuel Correa, Miney, Boschon, Dennis Hauger, Jack Crawford, and Nissani, Cordial, Johnson, Clement Novalak, Leclerc, Vachon, Fittipaldi, and Zane Maloney completes the grid. Now it's almost time to lights out, so let's get down to the track. It is the Formula 2 race. It is time to introduce you to Alex Brundle. I'm Alex Jakes, and we've got changeable weather out there today. That's making for some nervous team personnel down in the paddock, down in the pit lane.
There are going to be some quivering hands on the tyre guns, aren't there, when they tighten up what could easily be the wrong specification of tyre completely for the conditions. It's a gamble out there.
Another solid sprint performance. However, keep an eye on the front left tyre as it's wearing down faster than the others. This should set a good pace for another finish in the points.
The formation lap gets underway for this, the Formula 2 race, and every driver will be looking to settle in for the race ahead, making sure the car is ready for battle once the lights go out.
All right, you saw our possible strategies there as we are pulling up to our grid slot. Back down into P17 because of the regulations, how qualifying works for F2 for the sprint and feature race. We're going to see what kind of ground we can make up compared to the sprint race. We got P7. Let's see if we can make it better this time around. 5 red lights are off. Cordial is off to a good start, but Nissani ahead of us is off to a worse start, so we're going to have to move on the inside. Cordial loses a position against Nissani. Crawford loses a good position against myself. We're already up into P14 on the main straight compared to the sprint race where we had to come through the first few corners, pushing our way up into P12 on the outside of that first corner, inside of turn 2. And that's going to be a very strong push for us here on the start of this feature race. Vesti and Behrman starting P1, P2 because of how F2 starts with their top 10. We see Hauger and Correa fighting for position. Correa winning that sprint race as we little bit of a scrub on Correa ahead of us as we try not to cause as much damage. I did check to see if I had any front wing damage, but luckily we didn't have any. As Hauger trades positions back and forth with Correa as we're coming to the sector 2 straight here. PRS not active till lap 3, and you guys are seeing the stuttering on the video, but that is the game while I'm trying to record these replays. I have adjusted my settings. I've adjusted audio. If the feature race is a little bit quieter than the sprint race for you guys, I understand. I'm trying to fix it as we go throughout the season. So we're already up into P11, and we're rounding out the last 2 corners of this first lap for the feature race. That's Correa, the race winner for the sprint. You can see he's starting to pull away. Already 3/10 or so like we had. We were unable to change the setup. I should have changed the tire pressures, but I unfortunately wasn't able to. Lap 5 was finally when we were able to try to make a move. Correa, we're going to look at the inside, not quite, but he does have a lockup because he saw us trying to move on the inside, so that's going to be P10. Correa dropped down to P12 with that lockup. Unfortunate for him. It's not like we're trying to cause that intentionally. We're looking to make a move, but we backed out, and they thought we were going for it, so they locked up, seeing that we moved back. So, long right-hander through the end of sector 1, start of sector 2, and then this left-hander. You lose a lot of ground here. It's tricky for me as trying to push this car as much as possible. We're already in the top 10. Stanek ahead, 7/10 or so. Lap 6 now, coming through sector 1. And still about 7/10. Hauger P11 behind. Then the gap starts to form with Miney back to P12. 1.6 is the gap as we're looking for an opportunity. There's a lockup ahead. That's going to be Porcher. Lock up into the gravel. He's going to try to get back onto the track. He's going to drop back all the way into the backfield. Porcher now back in P16. We closed the gap on Stanek because of that lockup. All the cars ahead had to be cautious towards the driver ahead. So that's Fittipaldi, Maloney, Porcher, back Novalak, Leclerc, all in the backfield as our teammate is still caught there in the backfield. I believe Cordial back at P20, lap 8 now. We're caught up to Stanek and we're trying to make a move. Not quite there on the previous turn. We're going to make a dive bomb on the inside. A little bit of cheeky dive bomb, taking a lot of curb. It's not going to help our tire life here as we're getting ready to come into the pits actually on this lap. Stanek holding his line on the inside, getting DRS. We both get DRS, I believe. Unless he got it behind me. I'm not quite sure. I don't remember. But we're going to try to make the same cheeky move on the inside of this left-hander. And we do so. Holding on to P8. We just have to make sure we maintain that line. Kind of cutting him off there as you see that turn. How the cars were reacting. But we're going to be coming into the pits. And we're not going to be the only ones to come into the pits. I believe that is Awasa. It's going to be a Red Bull. I believe that is Awasa ahead of us. Coming into the pits as 4 other drivers come in behind us. They're all locking up behind us for that timing line. But we're no problem here as we come into our pit stop. So not really feeling too bad about it. Swapping over to a new set of hard tires. See the Red Bull of, I believe, Maloney there as we're coming out. A little bit of a late outing of our pit box. You can see Awasa up ahead. And then the rest of the drivers following him behind. So we don't necessarily lose a position in the pits. As you see, Nissani has DNF'd. I believe, during this first set of pit stops. I'm not sure what happened. I didn't look back and see what happened. We're not really going to show any incidents throughout F2. We're going to save that for F1. But coming around the end of lap 9 to see where we come out for the rest of the pit stops. Cordial in the pits. See all those red markers of people. As Vesti moves up, Lawson moves up, Behrman moves down on a position. And we come out ahead of Haugert and Correa. We're still sitting at P8. So, not really of an order change for us, as we got the rest of the race to go on these hard tires. And if it's going to be anything like the sprint race, we may gain at least 3 or 4 positions, possibly a podium. Lap 11, we're trying to close in on Hadjar. Getting right up into the gearbox. We're going to move on the inside, see if we get that fresh air and try to move. Not likely. We move to the outside. And trying to do another switchback on Hadjar as we're coming up to this left-hander. That's going to be a lockup from Hadjar. We're going to have contact, and we're going to be going into the gravel trap. Very unfortunate. I had nowhere to go. I tried to move out of the way, but I was just way too close to Hadjar as he's falling down the order. Back there in P18, a little bit of a latency issue there again as we're coming through Sector 2. It's going to be very unfortunate for Hadjar. We didn't get a penalty. They had a lockup. We got cut up behind them. And we followed them into the gravel trap. So very unfortunate for us. But we only lose 1 position, or 2 positions practically. As we were fighting for P7. Hauger up in P7, Miney up in P8. Trying to fight Miney for P8 at this time on the inside corner. And we do so quite easily on these hard tires. That's going to be P8. We're within the points. We just have to hold on to this till the end of the race. You can see Fittipaldi now back down in P21 with our second DNF of the race. As we're going to go ahead and go to the commentary box, see what they have to say about today's race.
It's been an eventful weekend here in Spain with the F2 feature race nearing its conclusion. There have been numerous retirements, and we've just witnessed a narrow escape between Johnson and Hadjar not long ago.
The lockup proved to be unfortunate for both drivers. Johnson was following pretty much right against the back of Hadjar's gearbox, most likely planning to attempt an overtake in the upcoming corners. Unfortunately, he didn't have sufficient time to react, leading to both drivers ending up in the gravel trap. We nearly saw the deployment of a safety car as Hadjar was trying to get out of the gravel trap. He was the main casualty of that incident, falling back to P19, while Johnson remains in the top 10.
It was unfortunate for several drivers over the weekend as there were numerous lockups. However, some drivers managed to capitalize on these mistakes, placing themselves in a more advantageous position.
Many of the newer drivers are still finding their footing, whereas Johnson is in a league of his own. At this pace, he appears to be a strong candidate for an F1 seat in the 2024 season. I know we've brought it up in past races, but what teams could be looking for him as a driver?
Alpine emerges as a probable choice, given Johnson's involvement in their driver academy. However, Haas's American connections also make it a contender, or potentially pairing Johnson with Sargent for an all-American driver lineup. Additionally, considering the performance of some drivers in the backfield, teams like AlphaTauri or Sauber might be interested in acquiring him should he opt not to join a specific team.
There is a prevalent strategy in the drivers' market. Most lower-tier teams select from the pool of F2 drivers, while midfield and leading teams scout for drivers with potential from other teams. I wouldn't see a move to Red Bull or Aston Martin quite yet with how he is performing. But you can't rule that possibility out.
It's also important to consider the driver's achievements. Johnson secured the F3 Championship in 2021 and then finished second in the F2 season last year. Currently, he is aiming to defend his lead in the championship as the next race approaches in Austria.
We're heading into the faster-paced races following Spain, which I'm eagerly anticipating as we proceed with just 2 laps remaining in this feature race.
And as we start lap 18, you can see Hauger trying to make a move on us. And that's going to be a constant fight between us. Now moving on to the final lap, Hauger's making a move again. As we move to the outside, we're going to hit our braking point, let Hauger have his time. We're going to close the gap. It's about a 5-second gap between Hauger and Awasa for P6. But The important fight right now is for P7 between myself and Hauger as we're on the final lap. Little bit of tire scrub there as we regain our composure. Get back into the toe of that Red Bull car. And basically play the long game, because I know we don't have the straight line speed. We have the cornering speed. And I know that we can get right up into his gearbox, in and out of the corner, and minimize the amount of time lost on those straights. That's what we're planning on doing here for the rest of this lap, as we have one more DRS section. Hauger's not going to get DRS. We're going to get ahead of him. We're going to at least try to get ahead of him and see if we can hold on to that for P7 when we cross the start finish line. We think about going left, we're going to go right, side by side through this long left-hander. We go over the white line. That's track limits warning. That's only our second track limits warning of the race, as pushing this car as best as we can, especially on the tire life that we have left on these hard tires. Making this final 2 right-handers. You can see Hauger, well, I believe 3 or 4 tenths or so at back there. We make sure not to invalidate or go over the white line for a final. That's P7.
All right, race over. Take care of the car on the way in.
Well then, that concludes another excellent race.
I'm coming through, is what they said. Well, they stuffed their car down the inside of the competition. Hard, but also fair. Great respect between competitors, AJ.
Our drivers are making their way out for the podium celebrations, and it's going to be MP Motorsport picking up the winner's trophy. Congratulations to the entire team for that fantastic performance. And after all that excitement, I think it's time for a lie down. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you when Formula 2